anyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, what photography means to them, and to dig a little deeper into the way they think about their photography. Audrey Wilson has been passionate about photography since picking up a film camera at 13. Based near the coast in California, her work spans seascapes, beach sunsets, birds and macro photography, and it's a range that keeps her creative spark alive. A member of OCScapers in Orange County, Audrey values the shared knowledge and camaraderie that comes from shooting alongside fellow photographers. In this episode, she talks about how studying other photographers has helped her move beyond flat images, building depth through leading lines, foreground interest, and intentional composition. Travel shapes the atmosphere and memories she tries to convey, particularly the feeling of ocean movement in her seascapes. Away from the camera, Audrey works as an accountant, and photography has become her welcome antidote to that world. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Audrey. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. Great to have you on the show. Thank you for agreeing to be here.
Thanks for having me, Grant. This is really an honor to be asked to do this.
I'm pleased you think so. I just have a lot of fun talking to photographers. So, whether or not we've got something to say at the end of the day, that's really what this is all about. So why don't you talk a little bit about who Audrey Wilson is before we get into the photography side of things?
I got my first camera when I was 13.
Okay.
We would go on family vacations around the United States, and I absolutely loved taking photos. And back then in the day, it was film photography, of course. So, you really had to think about what photo you were taking. As I got older and had a family, I have 4 kids, my photography turned into my kids and the productions and school productions they were in and sports and things like that. And then as we went on family vacations, I found that I was taking more pictures of the landscape and the wildlife than my children. And now that my children are grown, they're all in their 20s, I'm really enjoying just deep diving into photography and learning different techniques and different formats. Still shoot film every now and again.
Okay.
Do macro, wildlife, landscape. I don't know if it means that I have commitment issues, but I'll shoot anything.
I think it's great to have a broad spectrum, because if you get a little bit stale doing one, you can move to another genre and do something different, or you can combine all of them in one trip if you're lucky enough to be somewhere where you can do that.
Yeah. And if weather isn't permitting for a certain kind of landscape or something, you pull out your macro lens or...
Exactly. Yeah. So why landscapes? What was it where did that sort of germ come from? You said you started noticing, you started taking more wildlife and landscape photos on those holidays. What was it about those landscapes that sort of said, oh, this is more interesting than my children?
Yeah.
So to speak.
I think it was feeling small in the world, maybe just the majesty of the world. And when you're at the base of huge mountains or tall trees in a forest, and just trying to remember that moment. So I started just without much thought to the composition, but just taking it from more of a memory standpoint. Like I really remember what it felt like to smell the earth and be lost in the trees. And so I started taking these pictures, and then I started noticing, oh, it would look better if, and then my landscape skills started developing.
Okay.
And then we moved to California, being close to the beach. I just fell in love with the beach, and that's where I do a lot of my landscape photography, is at the beach.
Yeah. I'm very much the same, living where I do on the East Coast here in Australia. It's I could literally, and I am planning to move closer to the beach than I am now. I'm about an hour's drive in the sort of western part of Sydney at the moment. So it takes me a while and a few toll roads and whatever to get to the beach. But where we're moving to, hopefully later this year, as long as our builder can get fuel and all that thing, with what's going on. We'll be moving up the coast about an hour and a half away, and spending a lot more time at the beach. There'll be about 35 surf beaches within half an hour drive of where we're moving to. So really looking forward to that.
Oh, that'll be amazing.
So you mentioned something there that I'm intrigued by, and I've asked a lot of photographers about this. You said this photo would be better if. That to me is sort of the germ of where the art starts for somebody that is looking at their photography and going, okay, well, I've recorded this scene. It's beautiful in its own way, and those mountains or trees or seascape or whatever it is lovely. But that next bit after the but is where people start to go, okay, I'm now thinking about this differently. What kind of switched in your thinking when you sort of said that and said, okay, this would be better if? Was it looking at other people's images? Was it looking at your own and going, okay, well, I've seen some improvement, I could improve more, or what was it?
A little of both. I believe in looking at other photographers, and because they always take a picture differently than I would, obviously.
Sure.
They have a different point of view, different composition, sometimes they take pictures of things I didn't think to take a picture of. And then you look at it and you go, oh, I should have taken a picture of that when I was visiting that national park or whatever. So looking at others definitely influence. And what I started noticing was that other people's photos seemed three-dimensional. There was depth to their landscape photography, and mine seemed very horizontal and not flat per se, but it was just a picture.
Sure.
And that's started thinking of learning more about, like leading lines and foreground and background and creating depth in a photo. Really was kind of a turning point for me.
Yeah. That turning point, I think, is essential in anyone that wants to be an artistic photographer. But I think it is challenging because you don't know you want to be that sort of photographer until you get to that point of thinking about it differently. I don't know if that was your experience.
Yeah, because I just started thinking, why do mine look different than theirs? But I never took any classes or anything. So it was, okay, next time I'm at the beach, I'll start looking for, this or that. And kind of like by a stroke of luck, I started creating different images, and I would look at them and say, okay, now this one kind of looks better, or this one has more depth in it. And I don't know if I really knew what I was looking for per se. I was just thinking that my photos looked different. And then when I started creating leading lines or noticing the leading lines, then it was like, oh, so, this is a journey that took place over a couple of years.
Sure.
To learn, oh, I like the way my photos are starting to look. And I think it's the leading lines.
Yeah.
And that's creating the depth.
And I think once photographers sort of cross that Rubicon and, there is no going back, you can't go and take, you look at a rubbish photo that you take or, one that you haven't actually spent time thinking about, and you go, yeah, it's just not good enough. You get to this level and you kind of go, okay, well, I can't go back to shooting the same way that I used to. And in that, I'm interested in what keeps people motivated to continue to extend themselves and experiment and do things differently. Is that something that you look at in your own photography? Do you think about your photography in that way?
I do. Yeah, I always think I don't want to be a one-trick pony. I don't want all my images to ever look the same. But I also feel like I'm always still learning. Aren't we all just still learning?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, now I'm comfortable in the images I'm taking. What could I do next? How can I elevate next? What could I learn next? And for me, sometimes it's just, okay, don't do it at the beach. I'm always at the beach. And so, okay, go somewhere else where there is not an ocean. And are you still a photographer? Can you still take a picture?
Nice.
So that's always fun, is change my environment and, okay, now apply your techniques here without an ocean, without a sunset. Can you make an image? Can you really take that landscape and reproduce it?
Yeah. You also mentioned looking at other people's photos. Are there any particular photographers that have inspired you and said, okay, well, this is, it's not necessarily stylistically or compositionally, but their work just said, it spoke to you and said, okay, well, that's the sort of thing that I want to go, that where I want to take my work.
Oh, I don't know if I have any names or
Okay.
but usually if I go travel, you always, I Google that area and local photographers, and they're usually people that have like galleries in the gift shops or the downtown areas. I also, when I travel, I like to run into local people and look when I'm walking around the parks and things, and look for people with cameras and
Yeah, right.
ask them, hi. And are you on Instagram? At least I'm on Instagram a lot. And so I look at a lot of people's photos on Instagram
Nice.
and chat with them. So fellow photographers, I guess, would be my greatest inspiration.
Okay, that's cool. And you talked a little bit about changing the way that you shoot. Do you have a process for setting creative challenges for yourself? Do you set yourself projects? How do you go about extending yourself and looking deeper into your photography and thinking about it differently and saying, okay, well, this is the next step that I'm going to take?
I think it comes from looking at other people's photography, different ways. Like for the beach, I do a lot of long exposure at the beach,
Sure.
but now I need to experiment with exposure times. So 2 to 3 minute exposures versus just half second or 1 second exposures. Those are the challenges, I guess, for me, is just to create, it's the same environment, but I want to capture it differently. What can I do to capture it differently?
Yeah. Okay. What about projects? Do you set yourself projects at all? Or is it more?
Define more what you mean by
Well, I have an ongoing project that probably didn't know that I'd started 4 or 5 years ago, but I'm still doing it, focusing on textures. And so it might be a close-up or macro image of a small patch of rocks, 6 inches across, or it might be a stretch of sand a few meters across, or it might be an aerial shot with a drone, which is much wider, or it could be a forest scene. And what I'm exploring in that is different textures in the landscape. And I'm just interested. And it, as I said, when I first started taking those images, and wasn't really a project at the time, but over time it evolved into something of saying, okay, well, I'd actually like to put together a body of work. I haven't decided whether that's going to be a book or an exhibition or something else. That I don't worry about until I've got enough images to say, okay, that's what I want to do, and that's where I'm going to take the project. But in terms of the collection and the editing and the way that I look at those images, it is really around, okay, how do I explore these textures? How do I collect images that actually meet that criteria? Doesn't mean that every time I go out, I'm working specifically on that project, but there are trips that I've done which are specifically for the project. So it's kind of thinking about my work in a different way, a more structured way around trying to work out what I'm going to collect and how I'm going to collect it.
Okay. As you were talking about that, then it did pop in my head. I have expressed that I would like to put together a book, and maybe either a book per or a book, I don't know. But like you said, that's kind of down the
Worry
road.
about that later. You've got to get the material first.
The material. I would like to do, I would like to gather different photos of the different beaches and do a project by beach. So that is a challenge because I have my favorite spots. Everybody kind of has their favorite easy cookie cutter spot to go take a photograph. You know that this is going to turn out. But it's a challenge because then when I go to these spots, it's okay, how can I capture this place differently? What's a different, if I had a visitor with me to California, what would I want to show them on this beach that they couldn't find on a postcard that would be a unique view? So if I put a book together that highlighted Crystal Cove or highlighted Aliso Creek Beach, it wouldn't just be the same view every page. It would be a very unique book of all the different views and all the different nuances to that beach and places to see.
Yeah.
And as I'm sorting my photos, and when I go to those beaches, you sort them by that beach, that view, and the time of year because of where the sunlight comes and goes.
Definitely,
And
yeah.
so that also affects which direction you're shooting. And so it would be fun to put together a book by beach and have it be a beach collection.
Cool. What about setting yourself goals? Do you set goals in your photography at all? I mean, you kind of mentioned one about improving your photography, but that's more aimed at technique rather than composition and other things that you might think about. What goals do you set yourself?
It's maybe not necessarily for landscape photography, but because I do some wildlife as well.
Sure.
But it's maybe want to travel more and capture more places and more things and look for the owls that we don't have here in California and birds that we don't have in California. And then when I get to these places, the mountain views or the forest views are really amazing. And then I look for, okay, well, what about waterfalls? Wherever I'm going, is this more terrain, have more waterfalls or more mountain areas or field? Is it more rural? So a lot of travel. That's my goal, is to travel and just see more and just get out there more.
Yeah, cool. I love that because they say travel broadens the mind, and there's a very hackneyed statement, but I think it's absolutely true. It certainly changed my view of the world. And even though I think I live in one of the nicest places to be, there's also reasons why I want to move. So,
Yeah, right.
I think that travel has really changed my view of photography as well. I'm interested in how you think it's shaped your view of the wider world through your photography.
I think meeting different people when you go somewhere else, really, whether it's a fellow photographer, or just the people of that area that you travel to, really shapes your view of that area. It becomes a charming place. It becomes a busy place, just depending on the whole culture of wherever it is you're at. And that, I think, also, because when you're taking a picture, at least for me, it's a memory. I'm trying to capture the entire thing, not just the sunset or this particular mountain, or I'm trying to create a capture of the atmosphere as well, and the memory of what I felt there. So if it's charming, or if it's eclectic, or if the more of a hippie kind of vibe, you're trying to capture the whole vibe of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Travel and people, and it's all very inspiring.
Yeah, I love that. And it actually leads into the question I was just about to ask, which is, what is it that you're trying to communicate with your photography and get across to people? Because sharing your images, I think, is a very important thing. You mentioned you spend a bit of time on Instagram. And so I want to talk a little bit about the whole social media experience and sharing and whatever. But first off, I'd like to talk about what you are trying to say to people that look at your images. You said bringing about some of the atmosphere of the place. Is that it? Is there more meaning to it? Is there a message behind your imagery?
I don't know if I have like a purposeful message, but I do know that when I'm taking the photos, I'm thinking in particular of beach sunsets. That's kind of my favorite thing, with some long exposure of the ocean waves and things. It's so amazing to me. Whether, if you're religious, whether it's God or it's Mother Nature or whatever, it's just, there is so much beauty and so much amazingness to this world that when I capture an image, I just want to show everyone and just say, isn't life grand? I mean, just this one moment, no matter what else is going in your life, this one moment was just so beautiful. So life is good. Life is good.
Nice.
I just wanted to be a happy photo.
That's a lovely message.
I just want to pause and say, I see this. I feel
Yeah.
this. It was uplifting. Life is good.
Yeah. Cool. And in doing that, how do you sort of infuse your own personal expression into those images? You talked about not wanting to just repeat the same sort of scene when you're in a place and just go, okay, well, I stood here, that's the shot. You obviously spend a bit of time in some of these locations and you're moving around looking for different compositions and different ways of expressing that feeling about a place. How do you sort of infuse your own style and your own thinking into that?
I think with the beach photography, for me, the ocean, I usually go at sunset or when there's great cloud formations or something. Growing up, I didn't grow up by the beach. And so I think my children are the luckiest people in the whole wide world because they were raised in California by the beach. And
Nice.
now that I live here, it's such a luxury to be able to go to the beach. And I'm absolutely fascinated by the ocean. So for me, the key point of my landscape photography at the beach is the water movement, the ocean coming in. If you think about somebody that visits the ocean for the first time, they go and they put their toes in the water and you feel that water rush away and the sand, your feet fall into that sand as the water's rushing away. I want people to feel that movement, that water movement, that feeling of the waves coming and going. And maybe even in their mind, when they look at the photo, they can just hear that water. For me, that's my focal point. And that's what I like to do differently in the photos is capture that water movement in the photo and have that be there.
Yeah, yeah. That really resonates for me. It's really one of the things that I think most people would say would be a theme of my work is that moving water and the way that makes you feel. And that's one of the key things that I'm trying to do also with my work is get people to feel what it would be like standing in that spot and feel the water rushing around their feet or the sand between their toes and whatever.
Yeah, it's a great feeling.
I mean, as soon as I'm on the beach, I feel like I'm on holiday, even if I'm not,
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about your social media experience. I'm interested in how people perceive social media now. Where did you start in social media? How are you feeling about it? Are you positive, negative, bit of both? A lot of people have different and very strong opinions.
Yeah. I find it very positive. I've always had a wonderful experience with it. I started a few years ago when I had my kids still kind of in high school and junior high and things. I started a photo a day program.
Nice.
And it was like a challenge. And so they had different prompts and you had to post a photo a day and use the hashtag. And I thought, okay, sure. And so I took all kinds of random photos for the prompts and uploaded them and met various people all over the world. And, you chat and you comment on each other's photos and things. And it was a very amazing learning experience. One, to take photos every day and to look at other people's interpretation of the prompt. So this is where that looking at other people's photos comes into play.
Yeah, sure.
And how they interpreted it, how they saw that prompt, but also all the different places in the world, the different kinds of birds they have or, traditions. And I made some Instagram friends that year and I did it for one full year.
Nice.
And by the end, my photography had changed immensely because, again, it's that learning experience of you're out there taking photos every day, looking at other people's photos, learning, and sometimes messaging back and forth about, hey, how did you get the light to be so great in this? How do you create bokeh in the background? I learned a lot that year and really got a great experience out of it. And then I didn't do the photo a day challenge. I didn't do it every day after that, but I started just taking pictures and expanding what I would take pictures of, like we talked about. Just what else? What can I go take pictures of today? And gradually added macro lenses and things like that. And I just enjoy the photography community. I love talking with like-minded people and learning from them and getting to know people and sharing images and commenting on theirs and having them comment on mine. I just find it to be a very positive environment. I've had a great experience with Instagram.
That's nice. How do you define success with your photography? What makes a good photo to you?
If I like it.
That's good. No,
I don't know. Yeah. If I don't know, because some people would say, oh, you need so many likes, or, I've sold some images, but I don't have a storefront or anything like that.
Oh.
I've entered into different, county fairs. I've won ribbons. I haven't won ribbons. I post and images I really love didn't get so many likes, and images that I thought were fine, people went gaga over, and so I don't know what it is other than I like that photo, or maybe for me, I think I've mentioned this several times, it's the memory behind it, the experience of what led to that photo.
Yeah.
So every time I look at that photo, I'm like, oh, that was that night and then that to me, that's a successful night or a successful photo. That was a particularly challenging event, or the sky didn't turn out like I thought, but look, I still got this image. That would be a success to me.
Cool. Where does photography fit into your life? How do you fit it in amongst having kids, having family, etc., other commitments? What role does it play? Is it a relaxation? Is it a future career? Where does it fit?
If you ask my family, they'll say it's an obsession.
Yeah.
And I say, yes.
I don't think I'd be talking to you if it wasn't.
And are we not all obsessed in one form or another?
Absolutely.
There are worse things I could be obsessed about, is what I tell them. For me, it's a relaxation. It's just a time to let my mind focus on what's in front of me. And it just can't think about anything else, because it's trying to capture that bird, or it's looking at the way the clouds are moving and looking for a foreground. Then my mind is quiet when it's doing photography. I'm an accountant in my part-time life. I work part-time. So in my real life, I guess you could say, I'm an accountant, and this allows the creative side of my brain to work. Even though I find photography is somewhat mathematical, in your composition.
Definitely.
It's weight, you're looking at it and you're trying to weight your image and all that. But it's my alter ego, I guess you could say. It balances me.
Yeah. I mean, I do know photographers that take a more scientific sort of view of their photography in terms of the technical, they are actually calculating focal length and aperture and shutter speed and working all of that out mathematically. I don't do that. I've got an idea about it's roughly that, but I don't do math in my head real well, and I couldn't be bothered bringing out a calculator when I'm doing that. But I think, though, that structured approach can either put boundaries around your photography, or it can actually improve your photography, because you're nailing exposure, or you're nailing focus every time. I guess for you, is which side of the equation do you fit? Do you spend a lot of time in the technical side or less?
That's a good question, because with long exposure at the beach, you are constantly balancing your light, your filter, you're adjusting your filter as the sun is going down, adjusting, and you're playing with that triangle all the time. But like you said, it can sometimes limit you. So I have my basic settings I start with. My ISO at 100, f16, half a second exposure. And my camera's just basically, that's its default. But I can't stay there all the time, because, like I said, then
every photo will be the same, yeah.
So I can start on that mathematical journey right there, but I can't stay there. So I'll start there. I'll get my images and, pun intended, get my feet wet a little bit and start to feel a little bit more comfortable with the scene in front of me before I start saying, what's my shot here? And that's where the mind looks around and says, what if we try this? Well, and then you let that creative process flow. The goal is to look around you and say, and kind of have the shot come speak to you. Let the area tell you, hey, this rock over here is really cool. Or, what if you put these grasses, the movement of these grasses, or, you just kind of let the area speak to you. And then that mathematical triangle that is my default sometimes comes out the window, and you just start turning the knobs and looking at what you can capture in front of you. And so I'll say I start with that. I start with my parameters and then see where it takes me.
I love that. That sounds like a great way to do it.
It's working so far, kind of.
Let's talk a little bit about where things don't go quite as planned. Have you ever been somewhere and things didn't go how you sort of thought they would, but something unforgettable still happened?
Yes. Trying to think, good or bad. One of my ocean ones, we have a group here. We call ourselves the OCScapers, because OC for Orange County.
Nice.
Seascapers. So we're the OCScapers, and we meet for sunsets and sunrises sometimes. And I got there a little bit late, so I was. It was a sunrise. I'm not a morning person, so of course I was late. And I went to set up my camera, and I turned my side to the ocean because I wanted a certain rock in my shot, and I was not paying attention, and my camera got completely washed away.
Oh, wow.
In the ocean. A wave came in. I had it on a tripod. Wave came in, and then that kind of swell after just went right over my camera. And yeah. And so I yanked it out of the water, and I knew instantly, I mean, it wouldn't even turn on, and I lost my filters. And so it was a little bit of a disaster, but I learned from that you got to watch that ocean.
Definitely.
You just got to watch that ocean. But, that's what I learned, is just, you have to be aware of your surroundings, and almost kind of a safety thing too. I tend to get tunnel vision. Not that the camera's like on my face, but even when it's on a tripod, I'm just so focused that I need to be aware of my surroundings and everything. That was a good moment. But sometimes, like, when I've visited national parks and things, if the lighting isn't, you want a certain scene, you want a reflection or a certain waterfall, but you can't control the weather if the lighting isn't what it is. Yeah. Or if the water isn't flowing. I took this one hike that had 7 waterfalls on it. Well, by the time I got to the 7th, it wasn't a waterfall. Because the water just wasn't flowing that time of year. You adjust, you can turn it, hopefully maybe there's enough texture, you change your foreground and you can turn it into a black and white image, or you get creative. It kind of challenges your creativity that way. And other times you say, well, I just took pictures with my eyes, and we'll try again some other time.
I've got to be honest, sometimes just the experience of being there can be just as good.
Yes.
Sometimes it can also be frustrating when doesn't do what, things aren't doing what you want them to do. I'm usually a victim of my own issues, though, where I know I did a long hike into a waterfall that I'd wanted to shoot for a while, and I think it was about a 4 or 5 kilometre hike. I can't remember. It was mostly downhill to get to the waterfall, but all uphill getting out, of course. And I got to the bottom and found that I didn't have the shoe on the bottom of my camera to fit it into the tripod. So I took some photos and looked around and enjoyed myself, put the camera in the bag and had a swim in the pool at the bottom of and then hiked out.
Still made a great moment of it.
You got to live with what you've got.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about moments when things have gone right? What's one of your most memorable shoots?
I'd probably say in a recent one, I had shoulder surgery and was going to be, you can't lift. I was in a sling for 7 weeks and no lifting any cameras of any kind. And towards the end, I was going crazy because I hadn't done any photography and I was losing my mind. So I decided that, you know what, I just need to go to the beach. I'm going to bring my camera. We'll see if I can even do it one-handed. But I just need to go to the beach and just be there. And I was feeling well enough to do so. I went, still had my arm in a sling and carrying my tripod one-handed. And I was just so happy to be there. And the clouds were there, but I thought, well, whatever, it doesn't matter. And more clouds started to roll in. And it turned out to be an absolutely gorgeous sunset. And I was able to do some beautiful photography. And I felt like it was just such a gift because I had been cooped up. I was recovering. I hadn't been able to do anything. And it just felt like it's all going to be okay. You're going to heal. You're going to get back to it. You're going to be okay. And it was just a little gift of a moment to say, you're okay.
Fantastic.
And that is a very memorable moment. And when I look at the picture, is it the best seascape I've ever taken? No, it's beautiful. But to me, when I look at it, to me, it's very memorable and it's very special to me because I remember how I felt when it happened.
Yeah, I love it when you can evoke those sort of memories of something that is really positive. It is a marvelous feeling.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier some favourite spots. What is your go-to you keep going back to? And is it because it's easy and convenient, or is it because, okay, I've got unfinished business, there's stuff here that I want to explore and do?
A little of both. I tend to go to Crystal Cove. It's a state park. It's about, well, depending on traffic, it could be 45 minutes or it could be 25 minutes from my house.
Okay.
But what I like about it, it's a large, long stretch of beach. It has 3 or 4 different entrances to it. That's how long it covers on the coast. And it is never the same place twice. I mean, there's certain sea stacks and rocks there that are very iconic. But between the tides, where the sun is, the ocean, and I love to just go there and say, what are we going to see tonight? And I've seen even different birds there. I carry in my Seascape backpack, I have a 100-400 lens.
Nice.
The telephoto, just in case a hawk shows up or an osprey with a fish on the beach has happened. And I'll kneel down real quick, change a lens, and see if I can catch that as well. But I tend to go to Crystal Cove a lot just because of its size. And I love to see what the different tides do to it.
Nice. What about when you're coming back from a shoot and it's time to get into the edit? Is that something you get right into straight away because of the excitement, or is it something that you just leave to marinate and you'll get back to it when you feel it?
Depends on how great the night went.
Fair enough.
If it was just this phenomenal sunset and the tides were flowing and there was a lot of water movement, oh yeah, the minute I get home, I'm popping in that card and looking at those images because I want to also edit them true. I want it to be just as I thought. And if I wait too long or too many sunsets happen between now and then, I don't want to over edit. I don't want to miss how it really looked and how the experience was. But I don't know. I'm pretty excited about, maybe I'm letting a secret out, but there's a lot of luck involved.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
There's so much luck involved. So I like to go home and look at them and say, I think I got a shot, but let's see what happened. Let's see what that water did. Or, how did that tide come in? Or how did the light really shine on the side of those mountains? I want to go see what happened. It's like, it's a combination of me trying and pure luck.
Yeah.
And I like to see what happened.
Yeah, I was speaking to somebody recently and they said it is like fishing. You go out there and you drop a line, or you go out there with your tripod and your camera and you take a long exposure in particular, a really long 3, 4, 7 minute exposure, and you're not quite sure what you're going to get. Yeah, you can look at the back of the camera, but even that's still not going to give you the same as when you get it on a screen or print it out and actually say, okay, yes, this is something that I can work with.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd like to see, like, if the tide is low and there's mussels on the rock, and so you're trying to balance, is it backlit? You're trying to balance getting that detail on the rock or that foreground with the lighting in the background. And so then I get home and I'm like, okay, did I get it? Or, did I not get it? What do I need to do next time? And
Yeah.
So there's just some little nuances. And so I do. I tend to edit right away.
Interesting. Yeah. Speaking about both photography and processing and learning that, you mentioned that you learned from looking at other people's work and so forth and asking people. What else have you done to educate yourself? Is it mostly sort of the University of YouTube, or is it something else that you've done?
I took a Lightroom course quite
Okay.
some time ago, just in the basics of, sorting your photos and how to import and export and things like that. And then, yeah, YouTube University is basically it. But I get my recommendations from other people. We have a group here, a wildlife group, and we have a little group chat. And it's very nice because people will recommend different YouTube videos on, look at this way. This is how you could use your lens differently or a tripod differently, or here's a good way to edit and capture natural light better. Because I do shoot in RAW formats. So you're just basically collecting data. You have to add that color and that warmth back in sometimes. And
Yeah.
you don't want it to look fake. Like I said, I want it to look like how I really saw it. So yeah, a lot of YouTube videos, or if I'm doing it and it's like, can't get this to look right, then I start Googling or asking friends or whatever I wouldn't say I'm self-taught because I get the information from somewhere else.
Sure.
I figure out a whole lot on my own.
Fair enough.
Not that smart.
And what about the edits? You mentioned that you're trying to bring about that realistic feeling to them. How long are you spending on an image? Is it minutes, days, months, weeks?
Oh, not days, months, or weeks.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, and the accountant in me comes out where it's like, okay, I could edit this.
Counting the pixels.
Right. Or, where am I putting that slider, But I did see I guess you call them memes or whatever, where somebody said, me at 3 a.m. adjusting that slider so on something nobody will ever notice. I'm never going to know that I moved that slider just a hair.
Yeah.
So at some point I do have to tell myself, stop it. Nobody
cares. Nobody else cares.
Yeah, nobody cares. And once I get it to where I'm really happy with it, like where I look at it and I think it's taking my breath away, looking at it as it did when I shot it, then I really try to leave it there. I really try to leave it there. I don't want to over edit it and make it look fake. I want that initial. So then I guess I backtrack a little bit. So I'll get it to where I think it is. And usually I'm editing at night because I took a sunset photo.
Yep.
And then I'll just go look at it the next morning again. Make sure I didn't oversaturate that sky. Get some kind of fresh eyes on it again and say, oh no, you know what? This isn't as warm as I wanted it. And I may tweak it again in the morning, but then I leave it. Then I don't keep going for days and days.
Yeah, to each their own. I know people that don't like editing at all. They do just minimal, 10 minutes max, and they're out. And I personally can't do that. If it depends on what it's for. If it's for a print and a portfolio image, then I may take a couple of days, maybe 3 or 4 days max. I won't go much further than that. But if I'm really keen to see it come to life and I know it's going to get blown up as a big print, then I'll spend a lot more time on it. But if it's just something they're going to whack up on Instagram because I happen to be somewhere and I like the shot and I'll do a quick mix of it and that's it. And it might take me, 15, 20 minutes max.
Yeah. So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So do you, when you have a landscape photo, do you have a basic workflow that you kind of do basically to all your photos and then go from there on your editing?
Pretty much, yeah. So I stopped using Lightroom and Photoshop a little while ago. I'm now using Affinity Photo, and this isn't an ad for Affinity Photo. It's free.
So you're not sponsored.
No, I'm not sponsored. doing that, the workflow is roughly the same as what it was in Lightroom anyway. And first off, it's making sure that horizon's straight and, you know, all the very basics are done. And then it's really contrast and detail adjustments and a little bit of masking in Affinity's version of Lightroom, similar sort of thing where you've got, you know, you can do gradient masks or brush masks and those sorts of things. So, but it doesn't do, actually it does do some more detailed masks, but usually I then throw that into Affinity and I used to throw it into Photoshop. And the workflow in both is roughly the same. And it's just build on, I start with an S curve, which I drop down to roughly 10%. So that S curve gives it a really harsh contrast. But then I cut that back so that that layer is only about a 10%. And then I do some more contrast, which are focused on specific areas. So some for highlights, some for midtones, some for shadows, and there's anywhere between 3 and 6 of those layers that are looking at different aspects depending on what it is that the shot is. And that's just using adjustment curves to slightly tweak, you know, if I want those midtones a little bit lifted or the highlights pulled back a bit or increased a bit because it was underexposed slightly, you know, in some areas in the shot, you know. So I'll go through that. Then I use Nik software, which gives me, I think it's Vivita 2 is the option that I use in there. And I tweak contrast and a couple of other things in there, brightness, contrast, and it's got a slider called structure, which I find quite nice. You can either take structure out or you can add structure in, and it either can make it, I mean, it can make it really crunchy if you go too far. I'm talking like little small slider movement. Then I use the define, which sort of does a bit of noise cancelling and so forth, which I've also done in the beginning. And the last thing I do is a bit of sharpening and maybe some vignetting, depending on if the image needs it. So I do all my vignetting manually. So I'll basically create an outline of what I want to focus the image of, get the viewers focus on these parts. It might be 3 or 4 bright dots in the mask that I set up, and then I'll reverse that mask and make that a lot darker. So it's that's pretty much it. And as I say, it takes about 20 minutes to go through. But I do that with every image, but each image then may have slightly different adjustments to those contrasts. So it is mostly just contrast, but changing your contrast changes the intensity of some of your colours as well. So I find that by adjusting those contrasts using the curves adjustment layers, I don't spend a lot of time adding and playing around with colour.
Got it. Listening to you talk, like I understand, like
Some of
everything you
it.
say. No, I know, I love it, because I have to say that's the side. I'm not very technical. That's the side that I could learn tons more, is the editing side. I don't know that I look at my images and say that they're lacking, but when I look at other people, they just seem so crisp or so, I don't know. I just have to say, so when you're talking about S curves and the midtones, I think that's the part where I'm like, oh, I need to really dig into that. And
Yeah. And to me, it is actually just about finding the bits of the image that you need to play with and work out what it is that you want to do with them. That I think when you're beginning in editing, a lot of people struggle with that. Okay, how do I want this image overall to look? And then what have I got to do to, you know, what's the recipe to cook the end result? Because I don't know at the beginning exactly how to get to the end result, because I'm still trying to work out what that spice rack has in it, let alone, you know, how much of each spice I want to add to it.
yeah, yeah. Well, and you can look at an image and you don't necessarily, because a good edit, you can't really tell what's been done to it. But like I was talking before about creating that depth in an image, looking at having an interesting foreground and guiding the eye in your composition. But you were saying in the edit, strategically vignetting on purpose and guiding where you want the viewer's eye. So I think the edit and the composition go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
I'm okay on the composition. I'm weak in the editing. So that's always a challenge too.
Yeah.
I could take this image, but how can I really enhance and just bring this image to life and make it what it is?
Yeah. To me, it is about understanding how to pick the bits of the image that you want to highlight, pick the bits of the image that you want to push back away from the viewer's eye. They'll get to it, but you want to diminish that as the initial impact, and that gives that depth. And using contrast is basically the biggest tool in doing that, and doing contrast in the right way is the critical thing. It's not about making all of your blacks absolute black and all of your whites absolute white. It's more than that. You've actually got to sit down and think about and look at the image and work out, okay, well, that bit there is it, and if I make this adjustment, I know that spot is going to get too hot and go white. And if I make that adjustment, then that black is going to get too black and I'm going to lose detail, but I want that detail. And you got to decide, do I want that detail or not? And so it is just about then selectively saying, okay, well, this is the bit I'm going to concentrate on, and I'm going to play with my sliders until at 3 a.m. until I get what I want.
And then look at it again tomorrow and keep playing with them a little bit.
That's exactly it. Yeah. But I think, as I said, if it's a print image, then that might take a lot longer, because I will spend a lot more time on minuscule details that other people outside of my editing thinking going to notice. But to me, when it gets blown up to, a metre and a half by a metre, you're going to see it. And I want you to make sure that it looks the way that I want it to look. And whether that's colour, and sometimes it might be a small patch of green and it's not quite the right green. So it'll be tweaking that green a little bit to make it the right green so that when it's printed, it looks right.
Yes. I took a photo of a moose, the Tetons National Forest, and a friend of mine wanted it framed for her cabin. And I was looking at the subject of the photo, which is the moose, but you've got the pine trees in the background and just a hint of the mountains beyond those pine trees. And I didn't even notice. And I took the photo. There were these little purple wildflowers in the foreground in the grass.
Oh, wow.
And she picked up on it. And she said, as soon as I saw your photo and those purple flowers, I knew I needed it. And I thought, purple flowers? And I went back and really pulled, because I focused more on that moose's face and did we get texture in his fur and in his eye. That's what I was focused on in the image. And then I zoomed in and I thought, sure enough, there are these little purple flowers. So knowing she was going to blow, I blew this image up and she was going to have it framed like that. I went back and made sure that color and that contrast in those purple flowers was there, so that it led the eye to the moose, and that you did notice that little detail in that foreground.
Yeah.
So if it's,
it always amazes me when
the purpose.
Yeah, but it always amazes me, like you, when somebody else looks at your work and they pick up on the purple flowers or something else in your image that you completely and utterly blind to. You just don't see until they go, look at that, and you go, oh, I didn't even know that was there.
Or some people say, I love the way my eye just does this or this in your photo. And I'm like, yeah, I guess it does. I guess you can look at it that way. And I do like to hear what I don't know if that's an ego thing, but I do like to hear what other people like about my photos, because then that also gives me something to try to look for the next time I'm going to take a photo. Oh, people enjoy that kind of a composition, or people like that color scheme or that subject matter. And it does kind of help you when you go to take a photo again, is I could try this again because somebody mentioned they liked that.
Yeah.
I can see if I can make that work.
Oh, definitely makes a difference. You mentioned being part of the, was it the OC?
The OCScapers.
Scapers, yes. Do you like, or do you prefer photographing with other people or on your own?
Oh, you're going to get me in trouble. I have to say probably, I don't know. That is a tough question. 70% of the time, I like doing it by myself.
Uh-huh.
Don't tell anybody. I don't know. I don't know. But I will say shooting with other people is extremely educational.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh, but I almost don't get shots when I shoot with other people, especially landscape, because I don't want to shoot over their shoulder. And you don't want to be taking the same shot. But I love to see what other people take photos of.
Mm.
I love to see their process. It's just fascinating to me because all of our brains work so differently. And so, especially at the beach, we'll walk down there and then we just scatter.
Got it,
And
yeah.
yeah, and we come back together at the end. And so then I love to just kind of stand there for a minute and watch where everybody's going.
Mm.
What if this one's going over to a rock formation? This one's not. It's just fascinating to me. So I do love to shoot with other people and then do the download when we get back. Oh, did you see, when the sun came up, did you catch this light or, whatever? And why did you go over to this side of the beach? Oh, did you know there's a cave over there? No, I didn't know that, So the download after is invaluable. I mean, it's fabulous. But my most successful shots, I will have to say, I take alone because I feel more uninhibited, I guess is the word.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like I can do whatever and I'm not as self-conscious or
Interesting.
yeah. Yes and no.
I always find it depends on who I'm with. If I'm with other photographers, I know they're not going to think me rude if I just disappear down the beach or down that path 150 meters away from them and don't talk to them for an hour. But if I'm with my wife, I have to say, we're going to take photos and there's going to be moments when I disappear and we're not going to talk a lot.
I did get kicked out I didn't get invited back to a hiking group because I brought my camera and I kept saying, I'll catch up. And I didn't get invited because nobody else brought a camera.
Let's talk a little bit about when photography sort of pales and you kind of go, okay, I'm lacking inspiration. What do you do when you get to that point where things aren't bubbling away and you're not excited about it? Does it happen for you?
Oh, yes, that has happened. Yeah. I have to say it happens more with wildlife photography a little bit. Because you can't control the animals. And there are seasons in the winter season, they're not super active.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go out and put your time in and come home with nothing. And you can that time and time again. And there are seasons at the beach where there isn't a cloud in the sky. And so to me, they're not as interesting of a shot. So if I can't control that and, I go to the beach time and time again and I'm not getting a real wow image for me. Yeah. You can go through a dry spell where it's like, I just still feel like lugging it down there for nothing again.
Mm-hmm.
But I do find that you got to keep doing it. You got to keep getting on that bicycle and you got to keep going because if I don't, then I tend to say, well, why am I going, then I won't go down. And then one day you do miss something.
Yeah.
And you miss that sunset. You miss that owl. Part of the photography is the time. And sometimes it's training the eye. And even when you're not getting what you think is a great shot or an animal or a composition or a sunset or whatever, your eye is still out there. You're still looking. You're still putting the time in. You're still composing. It may not be something you want to press the shutter on, but you're still composing in your head.
Yeah.
And that keeps that muscle, that photography muscle alive. And then when the conditions do and the planets do align, you're there and you're ready. And you've been exercising that the composition muscle, and you can jump right in there and you get your shot.
Yeah.
And then it makes them special because it's like this reward that you earned because you pushed through when you didn't want to. You haven't had anything really good for a while. And then when you get that and when you make that shot, it's like, I worked hard for this. It wasn't just that one moment of pressing the button. It was the weeks and months that led up to it that all compiled into that shot and that moment.
Yeah.
For me, anyway.
Fantastic. What's the best and or worst piece of advice anyone's given you?
Wow. I think the best advice I ever got, I was in a Milky Way photo group. It was like a workshop. I was there learning in Joshua Tree National Park, learning how to do Milky Way photography. And so while we were waiting for the sun to go down, not a cloud in the sky, which is what you want for Milky Way photography, but we were still just shooting and talking and things. And the best advice I got from a fellow photographer was, in landscape photography, you want something in your foreground.
Yeah.
You may be taking a picture of a rock or a mountain or an ocean or a sunset, but you want something in your foreground. And that, I misunderstood it in the beginning when I first got that advice. I got it probably 5 years ago. So me learning what that meant to me was a lot of trial and error, but it has been invaluable in creating that depth that we've talked about in the photos. Is having, it's not your focal point necessarily of your photo, but having something in the foreground to start the viewer to create that depth. That, to me, that has been one of the best. The worst was somebody told me, oh, never do long exposure on like waterfalls and stuff. It's so trite. It's so overdone. It's like my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
I love it.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm trite.
Yeah. I don't think, I don't think people's advice is worth taking most of the time anyway. You can say that about any sort of photography, you know, long exposure, sunset or sunrise at a beach.
We're done.
Overdone, there's lots of it about. But if you enjoy doing it, keep doing it. Don't stop because somebody thinks it's a hackneyed, old-fashioned way of doing things, you know?
Yeah. No, it's my favorite. And I've taken other landscape, but right now I'm absolutely obsessed with sunsets at the beach because you never know how long we're going to live here by the beach. When we first moved to California, we thought 5 years max, as long as we'll be here. We've been here 22 years and we were in one location for 18 and we weren't that close to the beach. And now we're super close to the beach and we've been here 5.5 years. And yeah, if I look back through all my photos, the beach is forefront right now, but I don't know how long we'll live here. So I'm taking full advantage of it and then I'll find beauty in the next place.
Fantastic.
My next obsession will be.
That's marvelous. Are there any photographers out there that I need to be talking to on the podcast?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me this and I didn't write. The first one that comes to my mind is Roger Sue.
Mm-hmm.
The reason is not only is he a brilliant photographer, but he's colorblind. And yet you would never know it by his images. And that is Instagram handle too. There's Travis up in, I'll have to send you a message with their names on Instagram. But
yeah, that's fine.
Pacific Northwest. He does a lot with Mount Rainier and the forests. His composition and the way he captures light in the forest is just phenomenal. Just phenomenal.
Awesome. Thank you for that. My last question to you is one that I've been asking right from the beginning. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Yes. Yeah, okay. It's a Hawaiian pizza. We love it. Do you? You do, obviously?
I don't care. If it's on there, I'm not picking it off. If it's not on there, it's not something that I specifically go out of my way to order. If I was making a pizza at home, I probably wouldn't put pineapple on. Not unless there was a tin of pineapple open and I thought, no, I'm going to use the chunks and put it on, you know. But if it's on there, I'm not picking it off though. So I'm kind of a neutral, positive neutral.
There was a time frame. That was my husband's favorite pizza. Was
wow.
What do we call it? Canadian bacon pineapple.
Mm-hmm.
We call it a Hawaiian pizza.
Yeah, no, I liked it as a kid, probably more than I like it now. But even back then, the Supreme was always the go-to. If I was asked to order one, it would be, get me a Supreme, one with everything, you know.
Mine would be pepperoni black olive.
Nice.
If I had a pizza all to myself, pepperoni black olive.
Yeah, very traditional. All right. Well, it's been wonderful getting to know you better, Audrey. Thank you so much for taking some time. Where can people find you?
Instagram mostly. I'm Audrey Wilson on Instagram.
Perfect.
The O in Wilson is a 0.
Oh, okay.
That's how people can find me. That's where I don't really post on Facebook or anything, but I'm on Instagram.
All right. Wonderful. Thanks very much, Audrey.
Thank you so much for having me. This was absolutely delightful, and I loved hearing your editing process.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnephotography.com. I'm also on a lot of social media except for Twitter or X. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe because it really helps to get the podcast to be seen and heard. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.